Buddhist sermon. Buddhist sermon is delivered by Venerable Polpithimukalane Pagngasiri Tero.
Samanta Chakravalesu Atra Gachantu Devata Saddhammang Munirajas Sunantu Saggamokkadang Dhammasavana Kalo Ayam Bhadanta Dhammasavana Kalo Ayam Bhadanta Dhammasavana Kalo Ayam Bhadanta. May all divine beings arrive here to listen to sublime Dhamma expounded by the fully enlightened one. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Honor to the Supreme Buddha, the Blessed One, the Exalted One, the fully enlightened one. Meritorious devotees, Dhamma friends, today I am going to explicate to you the Dhamma expounded by the fully enlightened one in relation to a discourse expounded by our Blessed One, which is found in Anguttara Nikaya miscellaneous section, the second part, that is Chatukka Nipataya. The discourse is called Sotanuddhata discourse. Sotanuddhata. That means how we memorize by listening. How we memorize by listening. Now, according to this discourse, this has been explicated or expounded in city Savatthi. On that occasion, Buddha claims, O bhikkhus, having listened to, having memorized, having orally read out, having generally kept in mind, having comprehended this Dhamma, if you do so, you can expect, four benefits. You can expect four benefits. What are the four? According to the first benefit, Buddha says, suppose a bhikkhu, a disciple, studies Dhamma. Dhamma in the sense, Sutta, Geya, Veyyakarana, Gata, Udana, Itivuttaka, Jataka, Abbhuta Dhamma, Vedalla. Now, Sutta in the sense, the disciplinary aspects, according to our Attakatava, the commentaries. Now, Vinaya aspects, Parajika, Pachitya, Chullavagga, Mahavagga, and all those things can be included into Sutta section. Now, Geya means some discourses with stanzas, like, Ratana Sutra, the sutra in the gems, triple gems, Ratana. And Veyyakarana are expositions. Expositions like, Dhammacakka Pavattana discourse, the turning of the Dhamma wheel, their explanation is there, and such a Vibhanga discourse, where four noble truths have been explicated vividly. Veyyakarana. Then Gatha means, stanzas like Dhammapada. Udana, joyful utterances. Supreme Buddha, having attained enlightenment, uttered some joyful utterance. In the same way, here and there, we can see these type of utterances. Itivuttaka means meritorious devotees, the Itivuttaka Pali. Jataka means both stories of the aspirant Buddha. Abbhuta Dhamma means the miraculous aspects in relation to the Bodhisattva and the Supreme Buddha. Now there is a discourse in the middle and discourses third section, Accharyabhuta discourse. Miraculous aspects in relation to Bodhisattva's birth and all that. Then Vedalla means question and answers methodology. So this is what is called Navanga Sastru Sasana. 9 factors, 9 sections of the dispensation. So when a bhikkhu, a monk, listen to this Dhamma, studies this Dhamma, then he listen to it, then he memorizes it, listens to it, memorizes it, then practices it by words, verbally, verbal practice, then becomes mindful about this Dhamma, then comprehends with kind of wisdom. So, suppose this process takes place. One day, this particular Buddhist monk, this disciple will die. He dies of unconsciously. He dies, but unconsciously. Dhamma friends, even though he dies unconsciously, he will be born in particular divine plane. Now, he will lead a kind of pleasurable life there. However, he can understand the Dhamma. His consciousness, generally emerges slowly. But when his consciousness emerges fully, he very immediately come to the understanding of this Dhamma. That means come to a particular attainment. So that means kind of adhigama, or generally sotapanna, first stage of sainthood, sakadagami, second stage of sainthood, and all that. So this is the first benefit. If some disciple studies these 9 factors, 9 sections of the dispensation. Now, in this particular era, there is a kind of wrong way of practicing Dhamma. There are some monks recently got ordained. They tend to think it is a very easy thing to come to jhanas or absorptions or trances, and it is very easy to give jhanas to any other person. Therefore, there are some monks today, sometimes, earlier on, they were, some engineers, especially there is a person in Sri Lankan context, now especially we have to be thankful to our Mahanayaka Theras in this regard. Mahanayaka Theras have taken necessary decisions to stop these wrong interpreters, and they have been asked not to propagate that wrong Dhamma in the world. But still, these type of things are, rotating in internet, on internet, YouTube, and everywhere. So in this Dhamma sermon, I am, emphasizing the authorities, especially the government. Now already Tripitaka has been legalized, especially announced and claimed as a national heritage, and the process is being taken to, now process is being operationalized to make it world heritage. Therefore, necessary actions can be taken now to stop these wrong interpretations, because our uh, innocent disciples or innocent persons are suffering because of that. They will not suffer here, they have to suffer hereafter also. Not only they, but also the persons, the monk, those who are donning with robes, uh, telling that they are monks, and the other whoever persons interpreting the Supreme Buddha's teachings in a wrong way have to suffer later on by being born in the hell. Therefore, this is an very very kind of transitional period in our dispensation, because deterioration is nearby, because these people, these wrong weavers, these foolish persons have entered the dispensation. Now they are destroying, deteriorating our sublime Supreme Buddha's teachings. So we have to be very careful about that. Therefore, those who listen to the Dhamma, you have to pay attention on the real teachings of the Buddha, which is found in the discourses. Unfortunately, these people, these so-called monks, they tend to say, I am explaining from this Tripitaka. So, they explain according to their own way. They have their own etymology. They try to separate words not according to the Magadhi language or Pali language, according to their own mad way. Now, paticca. Now, paticca samuppada is dependent origination. They say pati means something we tie, in our waist. And icca is something else. Like that, they give very, very wrong, and we cannot explain such wrong interpretations and etymological explanations. Therefore, the ones who are not educated in relation to the sublime Dhamma, having not studied according to the real meaning, with the real meaning, right? Without having real Pali knowledge, they are guided by these wrong interpretations. They are carried away by these wrong interpretations. And also, some other monks are there emphasizing that birthplace and passing away place and all the special places, especially 4 places of the Bodhisattva and the Supreme Buddha have been taken in Sri Lanka, not in India. Now, there are wrong interpretations like that also. So, we cannot understand what has happened to our dispensation these days. And this particular one person trying to give jhana very immediately, and marga, especially phala, very immediate phala, fruits. Now, people are carried away, fascinated. Therefore, they tend to think when they sit down cross-legged, and very immediately they can come to first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, and very immediately they can attain sotapanna, sakadagami, like that. Now, that is not the way, Dhamma friends. We have to practice according to these 9 factors, 9 sections expounded by the Buddha. Now, this Sotanudatta discourse itself explicates, if we follow Dhamma properly, we can definitely be born in a heavenly plane. Now, this has been expounded by the Buddha. Now, in Anguttara Nikaya, the second section, you can read it, this discourse, if you want to. And also, then for the first time, as the first benefit, one can attain Nibbana. Secondly, suppose another, bhikkhu studies Dhamma, that means these 9 sections of the dispensation. 9 sections of the dispensation. Now, he also listens very carefully and memorizes, practices verbally, and becomes mindful, and then comprehends with wisdom. Suppose he dies unconsciously. Now, there is a great problem for many people that if somebody dies unconsciously, definitely that particular one will be born in an unpleasurable plane. In an unpleasurable plane. Now, according to this discourse, even though you are born unconsciously, having studied this Dhamma properly, this Navanga Sattu Sasana, you will be born in a kind of pleasurable plane or divinely plane. So, he will not actually understand Dhamma even though he will be born in a pleasurable plane, one of the divinely planes. However, a kind of Buddhist monk with psychic powers and having fascinated qualities goes there and teaches Dhamma, explains Dhamma, expounds Dhamma. Then that particular divine being tend to think, I have practiced celibacy in one of the dispensations. Now that particular Dhamma and Vinaya is this. Then his consciousness slowly emerges. However, very immediately he comes to the kind of attainments. Now that is the second benefit he gets. It is like this. Now suppose a person can understand the sound of a drum. Now we all know what is the sound of a drum. Now this particular person now goes on a road. Then suddenly he hears a sound of a drum. Then there is no hesitation for him to understand or recognize this is the sound of a drum. Just like that, when this particular monk, having studied, having listened to, having practiced, and then when he is born in a pleasurable plane after demise, when a kind of psychic powerful monk teaching Dhamma, this one tend to think, this is the Dhamma what I practiced in the previous life, and very immediately he comes to the attainment. Now third benefit is meritorious devotees, Dhamma friends. Now once again the monk practices Dhamma, that is Navanga Sattu Sasana, 9 sections of the dispensation. Then he also listens to the Dhamma, then memorizes the Dhamma, verbally practices the Dhamma, then becomes mindful about the Dhamma, then comprehends with wisdom. He will die, or he dies unconsciously, but is reborn in a pleasurable divinely plane. He leads a successful or satisfactory, pleasurable life there, but he cannot understand Dhamma. But a Buddhist monk with psychic powers will not attempt to expound Dhamma there. But a kind of divine being recite or explicates expounds Dhamma, then he may tend to think like this: I have practiced this Dhamma, I have practiced celibacy in a previous life, and this is the Dhamma and discipline what I practice. Slowly his consciousness appears, but when consciousness fully emerge, he come to a kind of attainment. Now that is the third benefit he gets. It is like this. Suppose a person can understand or recognize the sound of a conch. He starts a journey. He goes on. On the way, he hears the sound of a conch. Now, there is no hesitation for that particular person to understand or recognize this is a sound of a conch. In the same way, the particular Buddhist monk who listens to this Dhamma and practices this Dhamma, or keeping in mind this Dhamma, memorizes this Dhamma, practices verbally this Dhamma, and comprehends Dhamma with wisdom, then after the demise, even though he dies unconsciously, will be reborn in a pleasurable plane or divinely plane. Now there is no Buddhist monk with psychic powers to preach Dhamma, but a God himself delivers Dhamma. Having listened to that Dhamma, he tends to remember this is the Dhamma and discipline that I practiced in the previous life. Then very immediately he come to the attainment. That is the third benefit that he gets. Final one, meritorious devotees, Dhamma friends, once again, the Buddhist monk practices Dhamma, that is 9 sections of the dispensation. Once again, he listens carefully and he especially memorizes it, practices verbally, and finally he can be mindful about it and comprehends it with wisdom. There is no particular Buddhist monk, now after that, this particular Buddhist monk will be born in a heavenly plane even though he dies unconsciously. There are no Buddhist monk coming there to, explicate Dhamma. There is no particular Buddhist monk with psychic powers to explicate sublime Dhamma. There is no particular God also to explicate sublime Dhamma. But there is another, divinely being who was born earlier on and comes and tell the divinely being who is born later spontaneously, oh, can you remember we practiced this Dhamma in the previous life as human beings? Then this particular one says, yes, I can remember, and he remembers this very slowly, but immediately he attains the final kind of goal. This is just like, suppose two friends who were friends during their infants met after a long time, and they tries to remember their friendship, then they can remember it. Just like the same, this particular divine being can attain, in the same methodology is applied there in the previous methodologies, how those beings attain Nibbana. In the same way, this particular divine being also understand that this is the Dhamma and Vinaya that I practice in the previous life, and his consciousness emerges slowly, but very immediately he comes to the attainment. So this discourse, that is Sotanuddata discourse, indicates we should not practice wrong jhana, wrong way of attainments. If we gradually practice Dhamma, there is a final goal. We can achieve it. Now, these days, unfortunately, some of these wrong interpreters and those so-called Buddhist monks explain our innocent people wrong methodologies of meditation, getting trances and getting attainments. Therefore, our people go wrong. That is the kind of danger to our sasana these days. That is why, as I mentioned in previous Dhamma talks also, the present government, especially with the prominent, taking the prominent place in this regard, the president took the necessary action to claim Tripitaka as national heritage and trying to make it a world heritage. So it is a great action that has been taken recently in order to protect our sublime Dhamma. Therefore, meritorious devotees, this sutta itself tells us we are not innocent in the samsara. If we practice Dhamma properly, we can either attain Nibbana within this life or in the later life, having been born in a pleasurable, divinely plane. Therefore, having listened to this Dhamma sermon, may you all be able to comprehend the sublime Dhamma within the regime of Gautama Buddha Sasana. May the noble triple gem bless with you all. Akasattaha Bhummatta Devanaga Mahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chiran Rakkantu Sasanang Akasattaha Bhummatta Devanaga Mahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chiran Rakkantu Desanang Akasattaha Bhummatta Devanaga Mahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chiran Rakkantu Tang Sada. May you all be well and happy.
Buddhist sermon was delivered by Venerable Polpithimukalane Pagngasiri Tero.